All right, so should you be able to be fired, should your employer be able to fire you from your job, I should say, based upon your outside political beliefs, your outside the work political activities? Of course, we all know that the Mozilla CEO was forced out of his job, forced out of his position of CEO of Mozilla because he had made some campaign contributions in the fight to define marriage as being defined between one man and one woman. So does that mean that we're all at risk based upon what we do outside the scope of work? Now, the National Center for Public Policy Research is putting forth a program to make it illegal for employees to fire employers for their work. And here to discuss that, joining me in the studio, first of all, is Sharon Angle. Sharon is the president of the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. Good to see you, Sharon.
Great to see you too, Rick.
And from Washington, D.C., with the organization itself, the Public Policy Research, is Justin Danhof. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Rick.
All right, so your group is putting putting something forth which would make it more difficult, if not illegal, for companies to get rid of employees for their beliefs and their activities outside of work.
That's right, Rick. So what happened with Mr. Ike at Mozilla got us to thinking at the National Center, how can this happen? How can somebody be terminated for their outside political activity that has nothing to do with their on-the-job performance? And we did some research, and we found that Mr. Ike was not uniquely situated. That is, more than half of American workers live in a jurisdiction where there is zero statutory protection for an employer who wants to let you go or demote you or what have you for your private political activities. So we set out and thought, how can we fill this void? How can we help protect these workers? And through the Free Enterprise Project, which I direct at the National Center, we submitted shareholder proposals to some of the largest major American corporations, and we said, look, you have employees all across the country. Why don't you codify within your codes of conduct, within your employee handbooks, a new policy whereby you're going to protect every employee that works for you, no matter what state they happen to live in, so that no supervisor can come to you and say, I don't agree with your politics, you're out of here.
What has been your response?
It's been a varied response. I would say that the majority of corporations we have approached hadn't thought about the issue. They didn't realize there was this lack of legal protection, and so they didn't realize they had an affirmative duty to take this. So most corporations have agreed with us and have amended their corporate policies, and the first company I want to mention is actually based out of California, and that's Visa. When we approached Visa with this policy, they immediately saw the benefit, because there is great corporate benefit in allowing employees to be themselves. And so Visa, they changed the policies. The board of directors voted to approve the new change, and now every Visa employee, no matter where they are situated, can feel very confident and feel free to engage in the political arena. And one reason we think this project is so important, Rick, is because in America, with all the freedoms that we have, that folks around the world would fight and frankly do fight to gain, we don't use those freedoms enough. When we can only get 55 to 60% of folks to vote in national elections, we think that's terribly low civic engagement. And when we're talking about local election, where turnout is sometimes in the low teens, we think corporations, if they make it clear to their employees that they can engage freely without any chance of retribution, we can see civic engagement go up. But not every corporation agrees with us on this matter.
Sharon Angle, we're going to come back to that in a moment, Justin. You said not all corporations agree with you. That is stunning to me. Equally as stunning, Sharon Angle, I just assumed it was the law that you could not fire an employee based upon their political activities outside of work, unless those activities, of course, were somehow leading to terrorist or activities or something really out in the outer stratosphere. Is this shocking to you?
No, I actually, what happens with the law is this, that if it isn't against the law, people do it until it pushes somebody to do just what Justin has done, which is say, this can't be something that you can just do with impunity. You have to go ahead and give people their civil rights. And this is right up there with freedom of religion. If you know, it's a belief system that you have, and you should be free to exercise it. I'm wondering, though, from Justin, you know, federal employees are blocked by the Hatch Act, which prohibits some of their political activities. How will this affect the Hatch Act, or will it not? Is this just for private employers, and how can we make those kinds of laws that apply to private
So,
business?
Justin, does it apply to private employers only and employees, or federal employees as well?
Yeah, that's the project we're working on. Government employees of all stripes are differently situated than the private sector. And Rick, your reaction is one that I've received a lot. A lot of folks just instinctively think, wait a minute, don't I have First Amendment protections?
Yeah.
And you got to remind folks, of course, the First Amendment protects you against the government. It doesn't protect you against private action. And your employer in this situation is the private actor.
That makes sense. I mean, the first thing that hit me was it's a freedom of speech situation, but again, that's against the government. So you say, Justin, that your group has met resistance from some corporations. Who are they, if you may give their names, and what's their rationale?
Sure. So the first corporation that really fought hard against this proposal was Costco. The #2 retailer in the United States. Everybody, you know, has a local Costco in their area now. And it was really an interesting interchange. They fought our proposal at the United States Securities and Exchange Commission and actually won the right to kick it off of their proxy statement altogether. So the shareholders didn't even get to vote at Costco on our proposal. And so I flew out to Washington State and I asked the chairman of the board, Jeffrey Brotman, why in the world would Costco fight to retain the right to fire its employees for their private political actions? And the answer I got was similar to something you'd hear from the Obama administration. It was essentially, we know better. We don't want the shareholders, even though we're a publicly held company, to have any say in this matter whatsoever. So Costco, as it stands, has retained the right to fire its employees for their private political actions. And this should be very concerning for all Costco employees, particularly because the leadership of Costco, including the chairman, Jeffrey Brotman, is a well-known progressive. Their former CEO, you may recall, Jim Senegal, spoke at the 2012 Democrat National Convention, where he echoed President Obama's statements on "you didn't build that." It came right out of the Democratic Party playbook. And so if you are a conservative worker at Costco, you have some cause for concern.
And you know what? What comes through my mind, Justin and Sharon Engel, as you talk about Costco, is the fact that it was Costco who tried to suppress Dinesh D'Souza's book from being displayed on their shelves, and they made up some phony story about it not being a New York Times bestseller, on the New York Times bestseller list, when it had just come out. And in fact, it ultimately ended up on that New York Times bestseller list.
I'm glad you're airing this, actually, Rick, because this seems to be a good place for citizens like you and I to express our opinion on this. If we withdraw our memberships from Costco based on these kinds of decisions, certainly that would speak maybe even louder than a law.
Justin Danhof, Sharon Engel brings up a good point. Let me just say this. I'll contact you after the show. We're going to see what we can do here at the Rick Amato Show to make life a little bit uncomfortable for the management at Costco, for not being more sensitive to the needs of their employees. Let's put it this way. Sensitive is a nice word. For being so fascist towards the needs of their employees. We'll contact you afterwards and see what we can do to bear some pressure. Final question. Anything, as a general statement, anything our viewers can do if they want to find out about their employer?
Yeah, so there's a few things. First of all, you can go to our website, nationalcenter.org. We've got lots of information up there. We have links to which states provide protections, which states don't. And if you don't know, talk to someone in your HR department whether or not your corporation has a policy. And I'll say this much about Costco. Costco is an outlier. Like I said at the outset, most companies agree with us that protecting their workers when they're off the clock to engage freely with their government, with the politics that they choose, they see that as a value. Costco is an outlier here.
Justin Danhof from the National Center for Public Policy Research. Thank you for joining us on a very important story and some very important information. Sharon Angle, National Federation of Republican Assemblies, you will join us later in the